RMS Campania was a British ocean liner of the Cunard line, built by Fairfield Shipbuilding and Engineering Company and launched on September 8, 1892. Owned by the Cunard Line and based in Liverpool, the Campania was laid down on September 22, 1891, and launched about a year later. She made her maiden voyage on April 22, 1893. Displacing 18,450 tons, she was 189.6 meters long, about 20 meters wide, and had a draft of about 9 meters. She had 12 double-ended Scotch boilers powering two 5-cylinder triple expansion steam engines, driving 2 screws with about 31,000 shaft horsepower. She had a top speed of about 23.5 knots and a service speed of 22 knots. She could carry 2,000 passengers and 424 crew, with 600 first class, 400 second class, and 1,000 third class. She was the lead ship in a class of 2, the other being the Lucania, which I will be doing a video on. The 2 ships were partially financed by the British Admiralty. Cunard would receive money to build them in return for designing the ships to Admiralty specs, and that they would be converted to armed merchant cruisers when required. The contracts were won by Fairfield Shipbuilding and Engineering Company, at the time one of the biggest producers of warships in Britain. The plans were drawn up for a large twin-screw steamer powered by triple expansion engines. At the time, Campania and Lucania had the largest triple expansion engines ever fitted to a Cunard ship, and indeed the largest at the time, and they rank among the largest ever built. They were 47 feet in height, reaching from the double bottom to almost the top of the superstructure, which is about 5 decks. I'm not an expert on machinery, but if more detail is what you want, let me know and I'll either make a short or a full video on them. Anyway, each engine was located in a separate watertight compartment, so if a hull breach occurred, only one compartment would flood and the ship wouldn't lose all power. She was also subdivided into 16 watertight compartments with accompanying doors. She had enough reserve buoyancy to remain afloat if any 2 of these compartments were flooded. Though she wasn't perfect, on her maiden voyage and subsequent early trips, she was noted to have hull vibrations. She was also a fairly wet ship, and sea spray proved to be a nuisance to passengers. This meant that Lucania could be modified on the stocks, but Campania had to be modified later after Lucania's modifications proved successful. Her aft section was strengthened to reduce vibrations, and her promenade deck was extended over the forward and aft well decks, and then were fully enclosed. These plates further closed in the promenade. The aft well deck was left open above, but the gangways and forward well deck were removed completely, and 14 years later, the same design would be used on 2 other Cunarders, Lusitania and Mauritania. When launched, Campania and Lucania were among the most luxurious liners available for first-class passengers. They were designed to represent Victorian opulence at its peak, according to historian Basil Greenhill. All the first-class public rooms and the staterooms in the upper deck were paneled in oak, satinwood, or mahogany, and were thickly carpeted. They had velvet curtains and richly upholstered furniture. The French Renaissance style was applied to the forward first-class entrance hall, and the smoking room was an Elizabethan style, with heavy oak panels surrounding the open fireplace, the first of its kind on an ocean liner. The dining saloon was perhaps the finest of them all, with 10-foot ceilings. It was almost 100 feet long and 63 feet wide. Over the central part of the room, there was a well that rose through 3 decks to a skylight. The room was done in a modified Italian style, with coffered ceilings in white and gold with pillars. Sorry, I'm not an expert on styling, so I don't know what any of this means. The walls were Spanish mahogany, inlaid with ivory and richly carved with pilasters and decorations. Campania would have a rocky start. In 1900, she struck and sank the bark Embleton in a collision 30 miles northeast of the Tuskar Lights in the Irish Channel. In 1901, Lucania became the first Cunarder with the Marconi wireless system. Campania was followed a few months later. Shortly after the installations, they made history by exchanging the first wireless bulletin. Campania earned another place in history of wireless communications when she became the first liner to have a permanent radio connection to coastal stations around the world in 1905. This revolutionized oceanic travel, as no liner crossing the Atlantic would ever be isolated in the same way again. Though, that doesn't mean that they couldn't still be isolated. Campania and Lucania served as Cunard's major liners for 14 years, but in that time they were surpassed in speed and size by several German four-stackers, starting in 1897 with the Kaiser Wilhelm de Grosse. The German four-stackers started an ocean liner race that mirrored the naval dreadnought arms race between the British and the Germans. This would result in the Kaiser and Olympic class liners and two four-stack Cunarders, Lusitania and Mauretania. A third four-stack Cunarder, the Aquitania, in 1914, made Campania obsolete and surplus to requirement. Her 250th voyage was to be her last, and started on April 25th, 1914. However, she wasn't finished yet. When she returned to Liverpool, she was chartered by Anchor Line to do voyages from Glasgow to New York, but this plan never came to anything, as, well, the plane came to a screeching halt because, well, as we all know. Aquitania was immediately requisitioned by the Royal Navy, having only completed 3 voyages. She was converted into a fully armed merchant cruiser. Campania therefore had to fill in. However, she only managed 3 voyages before her age did her in, and she was sold for scrap. Her last trip as a passenger liner was on September 26, 1914. However, this isn't the end of the story, but for that you'll have to wait to the next video. Hope you all enjoyed. Figured I'd leave you a little bit in suspense. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and all that stuff, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.